Welcome to Lecture 8 of the Erasmus Plus AHEAD in VET project, Understanding and Dealing with Mental Health Issues. In today's lecture, we'll cover topics ranging from the impact of internet and electronic media use, definitions of health and stress, to understanding internet use disorder through a real-life case study. This lecture is divided into two parts, a theory session and a practical case session. Today, we'll focus on the theory to build a solid foundation before moving on to the practical application. We will also explore the role of vocational schools in recognizing and managing internet use disorder, and discuss practical tasks to apply this knowledge. The use of digital media has become a central part of both work and private life, influencing generations differently. Understanding this helps us identify when internet use becomes a problem rather than a normal activity. Let's dive into the content. In this section, we will distinguish between normal, risky, and pathological internet use by applying the World Health Organization and DSM/ICD criteria. We'll explain how internet use can affect health and stress levels, drawing on key psychological models to understand these impacts. Through case studies, we'll learn to identify signs of addictive behavior and stress in real-life situations. Finally, we'll evaluate the important role vocational schools play in prevention and early support, as well as their limits and the need for cooperation with external professional services. Let's explore these critical topics together. Let's take a closer look at what we know about the use of the internet and electronic media. Over the past few decades, digital technology has become deeply embedded in both our professional and personal lives. From smartphones and laptops to online platforms and apps, electronic media is now a part of daily routines in almost every age group. One of the most noticeable trends is the generational divide in how digital media is used and understood. Younger people, often referred to as digital natives, have grown up with this technology. For them, using social media, gaming, chatting, or managing daily tasks online is second nature. They move through the digital world with ease, often without even realizing how much knowledge they've picked up along the way. In contrast, older generations typically didn't grow up with these tools and have had to learn how to use them later in life. While many have become proficient, the learning process can be more time-consuming, and the digital environment can feel less intuitive. This generational gap can lead to differences in perception. Older individuals may look at younger people's online behavior, like spending hours gaming or chatting, and question its value or purpose. Comments like, "Don't you have anything better to do?" reflect a deeper concern about how time is spent and whether these activities are meaningful or productive. Interestingly, this shift has also reversed traditional roles. In the past, it was usually older individuals, parents, teachers, or supervisors, who taught younger ones. But now, it's often the young who are guiding the older generation on how to set up devices, use apps, or troubleshoot digital problems. So when we talk about internet use today, the question isn't simply, is someone using the internet? Because nearly everyone is. Instead, we need to ask, how are they using it? How much time are they spending online? And most importantly, what effect does this use have on their health, well-being, and daily functioning? These questions are at the heart of our discussion on identifying healthy versus problematic patterns of digital media use. To understand when internet use becomes a problem, we need to take a step back and look at how we define health. The World Health Organization's original definition from 1946 remains a powerful foundation. It states, "Health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not just the absence of disease or infirmity." This definition highlights something crucial. Being healthy isn't just about not being sick. It's about feeling well, physically, emotionally, and socially. It's about having balance and being able to participate fully in life. In 1987, the WHO expanded this definition, adding a more functional dimension. Health was now described as the ability and motivation to lead an economically and socially active life. This shift is important. It means that health is not only about your current state, but also about your capability, what you're able to do, and your motivation, what drives you to act, to engage, to grow. From this perspective, a person may seem physically fine but still struggle with poor mental or social well-being. If they're unable or unmotivated to take part in work, relationships, or society, their health may still be compromised. This broader view helps us assess situations like excessive internet or gaming use. It's not just about whether someone has a clinical diagnosis, but whether their digital habits are limiting their overall well-being, now or in the future. Understanding these definitions of health from the WHO is essential, especially when we talk about issues like internet addiction. Why? Because these definitions help us answer important questions about when someone might need help or therapy. It's important to recognize that internet addiction, unlike some other health problems, is not typically life-threatening. This means it doesn't cause immediate physical harm in the way some illnesses do. Instead, the focus is on whether a person's internet use affects their overall well-being, in other words, whether it limits their physical, mental, and social health. The central question we need to ask is this: is an individual's use of the internet, both right now and looking ahead to their future, limiting their complete well-being? This includes their physical health, their mental and emotional state, their social relationships, and equally important, does their internet use affect their ability and motivation to lead an economically and socially active life? In other words, are they able to work, study, maintain relationships, and participate in society in a way that feels meaningful and sustainable? By considering these questions, we can better understand when internet use shifts from normal or risky behavior to one that might require support or intervention. Stress is a completely normal response, physically, mentally, and emotionally, to a situation that a person perceives as important or threatening. This response isn't something unique to humans. It's a fundamental biological mechanism found throughout the animal kingdom. Pioneers like Cannon in 1915 and Selye in 1936 studied this stress response and explained that it is triggered not simply by the situation itself, but by how we perceive and evaluate that situation. This process is called appraisal. So, stress arises not necessarily because of the event, but because of our interpretation of it as a threat or challenge. For example, if we think a situation is dangerous or overwhelming, our body and mind react accordingly, preparing us to respond. But if we then reassess the situation and realize there is no real danger, this response can calm down. This process is called reappraisal. In other words, stress depends on how we view and interpret what's happening around us. When we talk about stress, we often think of the classic fight or flight response, but there's another important reaction to consider: freezing or hiding. This response is especially common in young animals when fighting or fleeing isn't possible. It's a passive form of survival, staying still, hoping not to be noticed. In this case, the body doesn't use up its stress resources like it would in an active response. That means the stress lingers longer, and it takes more time for the body to return to a normal, balanced state. Interestingly, this same pattern shows up in human social interactions, especially in situations where we feel powerless or unable to act. According to psychologists Lazarus and Richard in 1974, in real life, we often can't simply run away from or confront our problems. We're expected to handle stress, at work, in school, or in relationships, through communication and negotiation. Ideally, conflict is resolved through fair and equal dialogue. But when that doesn't happen, and one person is consistently forced to back down or give in, it can become overwhelming. This is where distress comes in. Distress occurs when the stress we're experiencing exceeds our ability to cope. And it doesn't just affect our mood, it has real physical, psychological, and social consequences. This can include things like chronic high blood pressure, stomach issues, anxiety and depression, or withdrawing from social life altogether. So, while stress itself is a natural response, distress is what happens when that response becomes too much to handle and begins to harm our health and well-being. Stress doesn't just affect how we feel, it impacts the entire body and mind. Its symptoms show up in four main areas: physical, emotional and mental, cognitive, and behavioral. Let's start with the physical signs. Common symptoms include trembling, a rapid heartbeat, and muscle tension, especially in the neck and shoulders. People may also experience headaches, persistent fatigue, trouble sleeping, and stomach issues like nausea or cramps. Moving on to the emotional and mental side, stress often leads to irritability, nervousness, or inner restlessness. It can cause anxiety, low mood, and even feelings of hopelessness. Many people also report a loss of motivation or joy in things they used to enjoy. Stress also affects how we think. Cognitive symptoms include difficulty concentrating, slower thinking, forgetfulness, and a reduced ability to respond or make decisions. It's as if the mind is overloaded and can't keep up. And finally, stress can significantly change behavior. People may have unexpected aggressive outbursts, notice changes in their eating habits, eating too much or too little, or turn to substances like alcohol, nicotine, or caffeine more frequently in an attempt to cope. Recognizing these symptoms is a key step toward managing stress early, before it turns into something more serious, like chronic distress or burnout. Let's now take a closer look at how addiction, internet use disorder, and gaming disorder are defined, and why it matters. We begin with the broader term, addiction. Addiction is a pattern of repeated behavior that becomes compulsive. That means the person feels a strong urge to continue the behavior, even when they know it's causing harm. The key elements of addiction are: the behavior is hard to control. It continues despite negative consequences. And it often interferes with daily life. Now, when we apply this to the digital world, we use the term internet use disorder, sometimes referred to as internet addiction. This refers to excessive or poorly controlled urges, thoughts, or behaviors related to internet use, whether it's social media, streaming, browsing, or gaming. The important point is that these behaviors lead to impairment, meaning they affect health, relationships, or performance at school or work, or cause significant distress. A more specific form of this is called gaming disorder. This refers to problematic behavior focused entirely on playing digital or video games. Whether played online or offline, the key signs are similar to other addictions. Loss of control. Increasing priority given to gaming over other activities. And continuing to play despite clear negative outcomes. These definitions are essential because they help professionals and educators recognize when everyday digital habits have become harmful and when support or intervention may be needed. To better understand when gaming becomes a clinical concern, let's look at the official diagnostic criteria for gaming disorder, as defined in the ICD-11 by the World Health Organization in 2019. According to this definition, gaming disorder is more than just playing too much. It involves a persistent pattern of behavior with clear warning signs. There are 4 key criteria. First, there is a loss of control over gaming behavior. This means the person can't regulate when, how long, or how intensely they play. Attempts to cut back or stop may repeatedly fail. Second, gaming is given increasing priority over other important activities, like school, work, relationships, or even basic self-care. Third, the person continues gaming despite experiencing negative consequences, such as poor academic or work performance, conflicts with family, or declining health. And finally, the behavior leads to significant distress or impaired functioning in daily life. This might include difficulty maintaining routines, falling behind in school or training, or withdrawing from social interaction. Now let's take a look at how gaming disorder is defined by the DSM-5, the diagnostic manual published by the American Psychiatric Association in 2013. While the ICD-11 provides a general framework, the DSM-5 outlines 9 specific symptoms that may indicate problematic or addictive gaming behavior. Let's go through them. Preoccupation with gaming. The person is constantly thinking about games, even when they're not playing. Withdrawal symptoms. When they stop or reduce gaming, they may feel anxious, irritable, or sad. Tolerance. Over time, they need to play more frequently or for longer periods to feel the same level of satisfaction. Unsuccessful attempts to reduce gaming. Despite trying to cut back, the person is unable to stop or limit their gaming. Neglect of other interests and responsibilities. Hobbies, school, work, or social activities take a back seat as gaming becomes the priority. Continued use despite problems. Even when gaming causes clear harm, like failing classes or damaging relationships, the behavior continues. Deception about gaming habits. The person may lie to friends, family, or teachers about how much they're really playing. Using gaming to escape negative emotions. Gaming becomes a way to avoid feelings like guilt, anxiety, or hopelessness. Risking or losing important relationships or opportunities. The behavior may lead to serious consequences, such as losing a job, failing school, or straining family ties. When we talk about internet use disorders, it's important to understand that not all excessive use is the same. We distinguish between risky, abusive, and addictive patterns of use. Internet use starts to become harmful when it begins to create conflict, either internally or externally. There are 3 key warning signs. First, when internet use conflicts with your own goals or values, for example, when it prevents you from reaching your educational or career objectives. Second, when it strains relationships with others, causing arguments, isolation, or a breakdown in communication. And third, when it leads to emotional distress that the person is consciously aware of, such as guilt, anxiety, or feeling out of control. When these types of conflicts are present, they can lead to serious health consequences. These might include mental stress, like depression or anxiety, and physical symptoms, such as sleep problems or chronic fatigue. They also affect a person's ability to function socially and professionally, impacting work, school, and personal relationships. But here's the good news. Recognizing these patterns is the first and most important step toward effective therapeutic support. Now let's explore the role of vocational schools in addressing internet use disorders, especially among young people in training. Vocational schools hold a unique position during a critical stage in a student's personal and professional development. They often act as a trusted authority, especially when students are no longer living at home or are gaining independence. They also provide long-term support, often over several years, building relationships that can make a real difference. And importantly, vocational schools can serve as a bridge between families and employers, helping to manage concerns that may arise in either setting. But what exactly can schools do? There are several key opportunities for intervention. First, teachers and staff can identify early warning signs of problematic internet use, including changes in mood, performance, or attendance. Second, schools can offer structured support, such as creating agreements or contracts that outline goals and expectations, always in a supportive, student-centered way. This leads us to an important principle. No contact without trust, no contract without contact. In other words, before rules and interventions can work, students must feel seen, respected, and supported. Only with trust in place can vocational schools make meaningful, lasting contributions to mental health and digital well-being. When it comes to internet use disorder, where do vocational schools draw the line? Vocational schools are not mental health clinics. They're not equipped to offer professional therapy. That's why it's crucial to recognize when a student's internet use shifts from a habit to something more serious. Professional help should be sought as soon as an addiction is suspected, not just when it's formally diagnosed. Tools like the IGDS-9SF questionnaire can be helpful, but only as a guideline. These screening tools can point to potential problems, but they should be used for qualitative insights, not hard numbers. In short, educators and staff should stay alert, but know when it's time to bring in the professionals. Internet use is a normal part of life, but problems arise when that use becomes excessive or harmful. There's a clear link between stress and addiction. When digital media is used as a coping mechanism in unhealthy ways, it can take a toll on both mental and physical health. Conditions like internet and gaming disorder are serious. They involve a loss of control, neglect of responsibilities, and real-life consequences, as recognized by both the World Health Organization and the DSM-5. This is where vocational schools play a vital role. While they're not treatment centers, they are key in prevention, through early detection, support, and education. Their responsibility isn't to provide therapy, but to guide students toward the professional help they may need. Ultimately, success in prevention and intervention comes down to one thing: trust. Open, honest communication between educators and students makes all the difference.